Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Moon Scarab channel. My name is Ramon. My apologies because we had a little technical issue earlier, but we finally made it. And I'm so excited for this today's show because we will be talking with the awesome Bill from the 999 ASMR Tarot Show. Did I say that right?
Well, I just shortened it down to 999 Show is what the channel
Uh-huh.
name. And then I had just recently split the content from into two different channels. And so I
Uh-huh.
have one channel, Tools of Fortune, is all tarot. And then the 999 Show is still the variety show that it has always been. And its focus will be more on um, other things. So it'll just
Mm-hmm.
remain what I'm doing now is I'm doing a lot of live stream art and trying to find myself through art, and then being April is poetry month every Sunday for the month
Mm-hmm.
of April.
We'll get
Celebrate.
there. We'll get there. Wait a sec. I know you're excited. I let's go in order because we really want to like dedicate the time to talk to you because you are an amazing being. Like uh you're delving divination, you paint, you created some of your own divination tools. You're a
Mhm.
poet. You're so many things. You publish books, so I'm very excited to go in detail. I want to like spend the time it deserves to get to know you. We all want to know you because you're a fascinating person.
All
So
right.
before we get started, let's say hi to a few people who stopped by to see us. We have here Divine Timing. Hello, Divine Timing. Great to see you. We have the beautiful Selena, Essence of the Moon. Hello.
Yeah.
She wanted to say hi to us. She can listen, but she will stop by to watch it again. We have the amazing Maruta. Hello, Maruta. Great to see you. Thank you for being here. We have Amanda, the beautiful
Oh,
Amanda from Tropical Empress and Spirit. I don't miss like I watch your shows all the time. They're amazing. Late at night when I get to work, and you're always live, so it's always a pleasure to read to see you and listen to your readings. We have the amazing Linda. Thank you so much, Linda, for your support and for always being here. Who else do we have? We had the amazing Patsy Q. Hello, Patsy. Great to see you. Thank you for being here. And Maruta just shared the link to your channel. If you're not subscribed to Bill's channel, please do so. It's just fascinating his content. And every time you go live, it could be 2 in the morning. I get that notification. I wake up in the middle of the night and you're live. I make a point to stick around and watch your show. So, Bill, for those
yes.
who don't know you, tell us who you are.
Well, I'm just a random idiot.
Oh, don't say.
Random
That sums
idiot.
it all.
Sorry. Well, I guess that shows that I have a sense of humor there. You can not don't take yourself too seriously, because
Hmm.
when you do art and you become a public artist, you can't be too serious about yourself. Otherwise, you'll get bent out of shape by all the criticism when people throw at you. And so,
Hmm.
kind of start in advance. Like, if I could have my handle as the random idiot, I would have it that. But I do on my original channel, which is like my museum of shame. And it's not really
Uh-huh.
shame. It's just this first stuff. The first stuff, because it was kind of like when I lived up in Seattle, and my first residence in the alley, the service alley in the block, there was this wall of discarded art. And so it was just out there, and I look at those. My first two YouTube channels is my wall of discarded art, and so it's like most of the videos are private, and then like one of the videos I let go. I re-released it, and I think Selena saw it the other day. 'Cause it was just me. I had like put sets up in the barn, and then I had a microphone, so I was pretending like I was doing open mic poetry and all kinds of stuff while I
Uh-huh.
was working graveyard shift. And so one of those, I stood up there with a jaw harp, and I was like for 30 seconds just doing a jaw harp, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. But who am I? I'm just some guy that does stuff, trying
Mm-hmm.
to trying to. I guess what if you really wanted to, if I were to go in there and say what it is that I'm a person who really has spent his entire life trying, really seeking after monetary success in art. It hasn't really happened yet, but it has been my ambition since I was like a kid, pretty much. Maybe not
Mm-hmm.
really first, maybe it wasn't really until my late 20s that I kind of figured out that I was an artist. I didn't really know, but that has been that ambition for a long time. But even before then, it was like I wanted to write novels or stuff like that. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
really, it's still the same thing, being
Yeah.
in suits. Or but if I was like 14, 15, it was listening to Iron Maiden and listening to Black Sabbath and listening to all these Judas Priests, and then playing guitar or sitting in front of an amplifier and trying to play guitar. And so yeah, it literally has been my entire life, kind of this whole like a ambition or a mission or whatever you want to call it. But that has been what it was, because being a you can be a successful artist. You don't have to have monetary success to be a successful artist, but you
Exactly.
know,
Mm-hmm.
but then because most, like, one of the artists that I had been mimicking is, he painted this one. I can't pronounce his last name. Leonid Afronev, and he passed away a few years ago. But he was like born in Belarus. He died penniless, but his paintings sell for a lot of money now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's I think it's everybody's dream to be able to get monetary compensation from things that you do, but that's not the limit of enjoying and doing it, you know?
yeah,
That's
and
you
and
know,
I have done paintings for I have that I sell probably these days. I sell probably what, $200 to $500 of art a year.
mhm. Okay.
You
Yeah,
know,
that was
and
just great.
and mostly most of it's all in the forms of cards, blank cards.
Mhm. Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about your channel. So, going back to the current channel that you have, well, first of all, let me say it's I have the pleasure to know you through Heather. Heather had
Yeah,
this show of poetry and with Jeff from Tarot Ass Backwards, and you were one of the guests, and that's how I connected with you. And from day one, I was fascinated with um your poetic style, and until I discovered your channel in which you branch into some other forms of art. And but let's start with the title. What does 999 ASMR means? Especially the
that's
ASMR.
that is my handle. And I left my, even though I changed. So when I first started this channel, it was the 999 show, because what I wanted to do was to do like talk radio, because I like
Mhm.
radio. I like talk radio a lot. But then it was just like, well, I don't have any following. How do you do? So it just sort of didn't, what I had in my mind of what I wanted to do and what it became are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
and maybe eventually it would become more like that talk show, having a talk show, and that was kind of the original thing. And then it just, but where the 999 came from was because I see angel numbers all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
actually, like up to even having that channel, I was like seeing these numbers, but usually it would be like at that time I was like I was trying to, I would see it in numbers. I would be like adding numbers up, and I would see, oh, this random column of numbers, it just came up to 888,
Mm-hmm.
came up to like 1111, or 12 1221, or 1212, or 1122. It just have it was these numbers, and it wasn't necessarily that these were things that I would see on a clock or anything, but it would be like I would be in my adding up a long column of numbers, and just it always just seemed to be a total like 888 or something like that. I never
Mm-hmm.
actually 999, but when I was looking for channel names, I was saying, well, I really wanted it to be 7, because 7 has a real spiritual significance. But every channel that has angel numbers like 777, it's all, anything like that is all associated with the 700 Club, with evangelical Christianity. And I don't necessarily care much for evangelical Christianity. To be
Mm-hmm.
perfectly honest with you, I mean, I do consider myself as a religious universalist, but I have a, if you want to call it a prejudice, well, that's what it is. I have a prejudice against evangelicals, but I think that, or a bias. I don't know what you really want to call that, but that's it. I not like it. I don't hate evangelicals, but I just do not care for much for that religious path. That's just
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of people have come out of it, and they come out of it with religious trauma, and I don't know. I mean, it's popular. It's a real popular path, but
Mm-hmm.
me, I
It
don't.
is. I mean, there's a historical context to it. I mean, that there's a historical trajectory to which evangelists, that like in my case, for example, uh, I was born in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, so we got a lot of influence coming out of Spain from Catholicism into the Protestant, different denomination of Protestant faiths, and I was raised in that, and in a way, I mean, it's especially if you are very invested in religious. My parents, they're my dad especially was very religious, so I was raised in a religious household. And what you say is true in a sense. There is a certain level of trauma that you experience, but I think that's part of the path of life. As you discover other truths, it's like a wall that you hit, and there is a certain trauma, but at the end, how it really comes down to how do you define that experience and what you learn, and where do you project yourself going forward coming from it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, okay, I don't particularly care for that. Like I say, I'll just come out and say I don't particularly care for that particular religious path. But
Hmm.
feel like I'm
Is
my
Mhm.
I was raised in a Lutheran church, which being one step away from the Catholic Church, and then I became a Catholic, and but I'm not really practicing. Um, largely my journey to Catholicism came. Well, it actually started before I went to Israel, but it was that it was kind of a part of that. But where I kind of parted with, well, I guess that's the way I would look at it, is that I like the worship style. I like
Mhm.
the ritualized religious service, and I especially like it within the context of those big cathedral churches where they got the pipe organ and they got the huge budget and where they're paying for choir directors and these big choirs and they're singing
The production.
big production of it, and then it's that in that the chanting and the other things, and it kind of speaks to me. So it's like when I was a kid, I would look at pictures, or I watched that show In Search of, and a lot of times
Hmm.
that show In Search of, it had it delved into Arabia and in that land between the Mediterranean Sea all the way to India, and there were pictures of temples and shrines and all of those things. When I saw one of those pictures, it excited something within me. And then it really and when I went to Israel itself, and I was in the Coptic chapel within the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, I had that awakening, that experience that I felt when I would look at those pictures. It was that mystery of that spirituality. It was this deep experience kind of a thing, and
Hmm.
and it kind of went beyond it. For me, it's not about the dogma and the doctrine. It's all about the experience that all of that stuff invokes in you. And so,
Yeah, I
like,
mean, it's a combination of different elements to bring everything together. Because yeah, there is the creed, there's the line of religious thought, but there's a lot of things that get involved with it. I mean, that are
yeah,
connected to it. There's an artistic aspect. We're talking about the music. In the case of some religions, uh, artwork, the depiction of different divinities, as a point of worship, as a point of educating or spreading the knowledge of the thought itself. The temple has a lot to do, because in a lot of religions, it sort of like is a representation of that glorious connection with the divine. And we say with cathedrals, I'm not Catholic, I wasn't raised Catholic, but I love Catholic religious art, especially like early medieval or cathedrals. It's something that really like transports me. And you don't necessarily have to practice the religion to appreciate it.
you don't,
Mm-hmm.
because things. This art was all about telling a story pre printing press,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be kind of interesting to see what would a person who couldn't read or write, and if their only exposure was this image, what does this mean? What
Mm-hmm.
is what is what does this mean? What does this stuff mean? And that's maybe if the attraction also going into the tarot being all about images, and it's not that much different between like this image and this image. And in one sense, they're different stories are attached to it, but that's so I guess I don't know where I was going with that, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking about, it's the appreciation of art and religion. It's that you don't necessarily have to believe in the
you,
religious aspect of it, the spiritual aspect, the dogma, like you were mentioning, to be able to appreciate it. So, talking about art, there's a lot of different art styles that you explore in your channel. Like, do you want to share with us all the different ways in which you express yourself, not only in poetry but also painting and etc.?
one of the one of the programs that I have, and I haven't done it for a couple weeks, uh, is it is coloring the tarot with a guest. I really like this one.
Hmm.
I need more guests. The last guest I had was Spiritual Rain,
I
and
have that book. I have that book.
And
I love it. I haven't used it yet, but I love the large scale of the images, and it's
when
great for it will be great for bibliomancy. It's a
yeah,
great book for that. Let me
and
put you on the
so
big screen.
when I had Moon Scarab on, this was the one that he did with me, and so it's a matter of like the aim of this one here is that
You want to share it
you
again so we can see it?
oh let me just find it here. Oh, I just blew right past it.
Yeah. The book,
So
it's a
when
tarot
I was
coloring book.
so when I was on
Oh yeah. Hmm.
with Ramon, and so he directed my hand as far as how the colors were to be, and so the rules of this show is you don't have to you color these the way you want them to be colored, not the way that somebody else colored it. So it's really to try it, but then you sit there and while I'm coloring, then you get to talk about yourself and things, and maybe I'll ask you a few questions and so forth. And so that's the
Hmm.
nature of coloring the tarot. That's one of the shows that of my talk shows that's recent to this year, and Roots and Waves was the first guest. The second guest was Tarot Your Way was Thomas. The
Hmm.
third guest was Tarot Ask Backwards, and then the fourth guest I believe was Selena with Essence of the Moon, and then after that I'm kind of lost track, but you know. And eventually in May I'm gonna have Miss Tarot D on, and
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
I have. She
When-
just sent me an email today with the dates that she's going to be on, and so, anyways, and that's that one. And then I had a
I
show, another one that was interesting, which is I had a guy from Newfoundland, and we did a paint off, and so he didn't really know the tarot, so it's like okay, that's fine. I don't to have artists on and to do art jointly in a live basis. That was also fun too, and I had thought about doing more of that. And then, but like so, like essentially recently, I just been working on water. I've been working on painting water because water is like it's like super hard to paint,
hmm.
and you get that experience of water. And then so like in 2018, I don't have the painting here. In 2018, I started trying to paint water, and I went online, and this is one of the photographs I copied off, and somebody's painting. This one's done with a palette knife, and like I said, I was talking about him just earlier. He's I guess he I can't pronounce his last name. I'm sorry, Leonid Afronib or something like that.
Hmm.
He was born in the Soviet Union, and then as soon as the wall fell, and and he escaped when after the Soviet Union fell, and I think he came to I don't know he made one stop, and then the next stop was in the United States, and then he went to Mexico where he lived the rest of his life. And but this was a for this being painting water, and this that photograph of his or painting of his was done with a palette knife. I don't really use a palette knife, but or at least I have with the paint mediums that I use. I have not figured out how to use a palette knife, and that's where I'm at. I don't know if I'm answering any of these questions right or not. And
Hmm. Yeah. So painting is one of them. And I remember that show. Thank you for inviting me. And what was so impactful for me was when you extended the invitation. I was thinking which card. I was thinking about which card will I could possibly get, and I was thinking it will be so cool if I get the Wheel of Fortune. And I'm telling you, like 5 minutes later, you emailed me saying that it was going to be the Wheel of Fortune, and it was an amazing show. I mean, it's a great card to color, and it was a lot of fun because we were talking about ourselves, about our channels, our experiences, but we delved into the Wheel of Fortune itself. possible meanings, what it represented in different aspects, and it was very casual. And share it and coloring, coming up with colors at the moment to be able to paint that whole picture was amazing. So that's a really fun show. I'm actually adding right now on Bill's channel is on the description. Um, please follow him because some people were asking. It's on the description of this video. But
Yeah,
you're also a poet, and I've encountered a couple times notifications that you are live and you're just like doing improvisations of a poetry. I've heard
yeah.
your poetry in other channels. That's how I met you, and I'm telling you, you're one of my favorite poets. I love
Mm.
your style. It's direct and it's real. And tell us a little bit more about that creative process.
Well, I've been writing poetry essentially since 1987.
Mm,
I wanted to write earlier because I've always attracted to it, but I the audio processing learning disability or difference that I was born with it made certain things difficult, and so I had to work really, really hard to achieve everything that I did achieve. And so I learned how to read late. I think, I mean, I was like in the fourth grade, and they discovered that I couldn't read. And and then, but then, when I was like a kid, I was like thinking back what I wanted to be when I was a kid was a college professor, but that never happened. But nevertheless, I remember when I was like filling out. I graduated from Linfield College, and Linfield is a Baptist college in Oregon. I think it's not a Southern Baptist Forum. It's the other one, the American Baptist.
hmm
And there was an American Baptist church in McMinnville that split the Baptist church because they married a gay couple, and it
You're
it,
talking.
it just divided, and then yeah, and that was a real big deal. But that I had met, and then one of the fellows in that. Well, anyways, I went to a liberal Baptist college,
hmm
and I got a degree in mathematics and religious studies. And
Mm,
so, but when I was filling out the application to go there, it was like the primary major I wanted. I put down physics, but the third one down on the list was creative writing, and I didn't. I only took one creative writing class on the college level. I took it at a community college because the high school that I went to, I think it's still rated the worst in the state of Oregon, and and it's like everybody who comes out of there struggles with things like math and other things, except for the most brilliant people or people who either parents send them to tutors or whatever. But nevertheless, it's like if I were to as a side note, one of my
yeah.
friends, he was my dungeon master, and he was the valedictorian of that school. He goes off to college at Oregon State University and enters in as a engineering student and flunks out because he wasn't prepared mathematically. So just about everybody who graduated from that school ended up having to do 1 to 2 years of remedial work before they were ready to go to a 4-year university.
Mm,
And there were some people who jumped right in, maybe because they were business degrees, or they played football, or there's something like that where they. But everyone who had a most demanding, more demanding academic thing had to do just a little bit of remedial work before they went. And so, nevertheless, I did 2 years of remedial work before I went to a 4-year college, and that's where I took some art classes, and I took some writing classes and all, but where I also did creative writing and 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 so where I would have done where in that I learned a couple different things. Now this doesn't come from there, but this would be a collage type poem, and this is something that I did in that class. But the other thing was that
Love
this is
it.
the relevant part is that I was introduced to stream of consciousness writing.
What's that?
That is where you are you write everything that pops into your head, but you
Mm-hmm.
work really hard at not thinking about what you're doing. So if you were to do some of the techniques to do stream of consciousness writing is to put a time clock on you.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna 10 minutes. You're gonna write for 10 minutes, and that's it. And then so you keep doing those exercises over and over and over again, and you train yourself how to write, and you're coming directly out of a different part of your mind, and but not a part where you go, oh, let's say that that critical thinking, that thinking part, uh, that's for later when you go back and edit
Mm-hmm.
the work.
Yeah.
You do
Mm-hmm.
edit it, but
You
you
polish
know,
it. Yeah.
but if you spend your 10,000 hours of writing or your 10,000 hours to do that, you will come to a place where you'll have to do minimal editing of any of your work. But
Mm-hmm.
you have to put the time in, and I put that time in of doing that 10,000 hours of writing or more, because for 20 years, it took me actually 20 years of writing almost every day before I felt like I came into a place of mediocrity where that's what I call it, where you have a baseline that everything you write is at least that at that baseline level where it's like, okay, I can write a line down and that I like it just as it is. And the
Mm-hmm.
baseline of mediocrity. And I think that's where you're trying to achieve is you want to hit that baseline. As a painter, I don't think I've hit that level yet because I may be doing good stuff, but I know that there's like more breakthroughs on the horizon to with both I had an insight just the other day in thinking that I'm going to be hitting a breakthrough both as a painter and as a reader, as a diviner, that breakthrough is coming. And and anyways, that's kind of my
Yeah.
story there.
Mm-hmm. Because we have more people in. We have Bobby Fierro from Wild Raven Tarot. Hello, Bobby. Thank you for being here. Linda made a comment. She says, fascinating. The author, James Joyce, a master at stream of consciousness. This is
Yeah.
so interesting. Is there a spiritual element involved in that in your point of view? Maybe some type of process of
uh,
shadow working in the writing process of using the stream of conscious technique.
well, I believe that any act of creativity is a spiritual process. Now, granted, when I moved from um, McMinnville, Oregon, which is where the college I graduated from was at, it's not where I live, and that's not where I grew up. And I don't need. But when I moved from there to Seattle, I just had this assumption that everybody who did something creative work was a spiritual person, but actually that wasn't necessarily true because most of the people who were in my orbit were either they had grown up in the church and were burned by the church, or they had they had an extreme hatred for Christianity and in all of its forms. And so a lot of the poets were that were that the slam poets and everything else. I met very very few people in that community that was even as welcoming as I was towards Uh,
What
uh,
what year was that? What year was that?
when I was in Seattle.
Yeah.
It was between December 2003 to September 2011.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and it was an interesting thing too because it was going up there partially for work because Oregon is has it's probably one of the I know as a blue state, and blue states are wealthier than red states, but I wonder where it sits on the scale is like where the economic scale I think because I never
Hmm.
really saw Oregon as a wealthy state, but I guess it is,
Yeah.
and but
I hear
nevertheless,
you.
it's like it's I don't know, it's the anyways.
Yeah. So you have you talked about painting, you talked about poetry. Any other forms of art that you explore in your channel or not?
Um, it's just those two. It's just the painting and the poetry. And the
Mm-hmm.
painting, well, then there's also the paper mache, which I haven't really done for a couple months, but I was thinking that when the weather gets nicer, that I might start, doing a little bit more paper mache.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, with doing stuff like those things, is like, well, what do you do with it? You can only how many if you don't have an outlet for it. Well, what do you do with the finished product? You just like throw it in a box and let it collect dust, or do you like throw it in the fire or something, or what? What do you hell? What? That's the problem with creative stuff is, and which is why I paint on paper and not on canvases because it's like, well, you have to store that stuff, and then if you don't have an outlet, like if you're not selling it, if there's
Mm-hmm.
no, you're not giving it away. Well, you know,
It's just taking space. I get it. You know, today I was decluttering some areas of my shed and the basement, etc. And I found a box of a painting I did like 20 years ago. And I was thinking, what's the purpose of me keeping this? I really enjoy the process. For a while, I was like keeping my own artwork because I just wanted to, I don't know, have it with me. But I got to the point that I wanted to start giving away some of that. It's a lot of like, big canvases and stuff. But at the end, that is the purpose. It's not a big part of it is the creative process, the outcome of the product or the artwork. Most of the time is very different from what we envision. And at the end, the whole purpose is to transmit a message and share it with other people. Um,
yeah,
I I have to say you're a very gifted artist, and I have one of your cards.
yeah.
Let me, I'm gonna put myself in the big screen so people can see it. Um, hold on. Let's see.
Think exactly opposite.
There- Yes, I'm trying to change it.
Oh, there we
There
are.
you go. It's
Yeah.
so beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Well, this one has my S birds in it, and essentially just like painting water so hard. That's actually one of my early watercolors because I've only been painting watercolors since January.
Mm-hmm.
Then my main medium of painting is acrylics, and this one, I combine the acrylics and so forth, and I kind of like this idea of there's a sailboats are more romantic, going into your painting, and but you're out there, and you're looking out there, and then you see a big old container ship going by, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's a fishing boat. I don't know. I mean, at Christmas time, I was doing my Christmas cards because it was I had people to buy my Christmas cards, and it's like, well, if a person, sometimes people ask me that if painting is relaxing. Well, yeah, it's painting is relaxing if you're doing it for yourself, but if you're painting an image like this If you're doing
Wow.
if you're doing 50 images like this in a week, there's nothing relaxing about it. Or
Mhm.
100. If you're doing
It
the same.
depends what the purpose is. If you're trying to like it as production, as a product, yeah, it could be stressful because you're on a
Yeah,
time crunch. But
yeah, and time crunch and trying to get things done. Well, it's like this time I was like really, really trying to get things done, before December, so that because I had these Christmas card orders and doing the Christmas cards and I don't particularly. It took a lot of arm twisting from my friends to get me to even paint a Christmas card, and I said, well, I
mhm.
just don't. Sorry, I don't like Christmas.
Sometimes we need, yeah, sometimes we need that push. Linda says, "Art is my love and such a part of who I am." Love the
Yeah,
watercolor. Yeah, those
yeah.
watercolors are amazing. And part of the so we talked about well, Bobby also says, "I love creating art, but if I'm doing an order, there's no fun. I hate it." Yeah, when you have to do it, that's when it could become frustrating or you stop enjoying because a lot of this process, emerges
Yeah.
on its own. When you're pushed to have to do it for uh, just for the sake of doing it, it becomes something different. So all this art process, you combine it in your channel with spirituality. And I just want to share with the audience a deck of cards that I have that you created, and
I,
it's so amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about it while I show people what it
well,
is?
this um this here is a um this one here, right, with the crosswords.
Yes. So it's a
Okay.
combination of like cards with crosswords and they're like, what is it, like scratch cards, right?
Yeah, they were my losing lottery tickets. I added that
Mm-hmm.
one you specifically because I only had a couple of those, and that one I added specifically for you because I felt
This one.
that one because I felt that you would get
Yeah.
something
The,
out of it.
the Aztec calendar.
Yeah, yeah, and so that was something that I thought you would get something out of that, and I don't have any more of those scratchers left, but I have I bought a lot of these scratchers. Uh,
I love this deck. I
I
have to
think it
say
kind of
it.
started. So
I
I
get a lot from it. That I'm sorry to. I just want to talk a little bit about this deck. It's just fascinating because it's a combination. I have to use when I use this deck. I have to be in a total state of relaxation because I pick a lot of it through combination of letters, numbers, and I always find a message. I'm not actively searching for it. It's sort of like it pops up. And it's interesting that you mentioned that it's from losing lottery tickets because that infuses it more with emotions. When you buy a lottery ticket, everybody has the hope that you're gonna win. So there's like a lot of like emotion put into it, and
Hmm.
then when you don't get the end result, which is having a winning one, there's a sense of disappointment. So it's like that combination of energies, like that balance of positive energy through hope and maybe negative through disappointment. And I feel that's infused here, and that creates a like a very energetic balance on this deck. I'm
maybe,
telling you,
but
I love it.
been the reason I bought the lottery tickets to begin with. I think that I was buying the crossword scratchers because I wanted to see if I could create a poetry manuscript from it.
Hmm. Really, wow.
That was
And
that was
how was
but
that project?
it has not manifested because it was well, a lot of those early projects didn't manifest. So like the what got me into painting in the first place was wanting to do a poetry manuscript. And I had a idea and I hadn't started painting. I had an idea that I wanted to take doing cross out poetry and and trying to find the right amount of words, the words that I liked, and then in everything that was crossed out, I wanted to use it in metallic paint, and I wanted to do the whole thing as my and listening, where every poem was written listening to some kind of black metal. And, and so I started the process, and I went and bought some paints, and they were all like some copper, some silvers, and some gold paint. And then next thing I know, I started not doing that, and I started using those paints for other reasons. A lot of it was I was, taking, and I was going through the scratch tickets, and I was painting out the words and making poems. I have a few of those, and but I don't have them here. And that was kind of what I was using those. I was kind of using it that way. And the next thing I know, I go back to the art store, and then I buy fluorescent, and I buy some other things. And pretty soon, I'm not doing that at all, and I'm doing this other thing altogether. And I was not expecting it to happen, because I had it in my mind coming from doing art in high school. And then the one art class I took in college was that, oh, I can't draw. I can't draw. I failed the drawing sections out of every art class I've ever taken in my life. And so I figured, well, you can't be a painter, because I wanted to paint. You can't be a painter unless you can draw.
I
Unless you
mean,
can,
it's maybe you can't draw academically, through the typical school of thought of how a drawing should be, but popular art, that's exactly what it is. It's the expression of art untrained.
yes,
You don't have to be a great drawer or a great painter to be able to express yourself through art. And most of the time, that's the most beautiful art. It's
yeah,
that genuine one that it's not taught. It comes
yeah.
from within.
So but then in doing this show, in live streaming art, you have to push yourself to do, because you need content all the time. You can't have a YouTube
Hmm.
show not and just do the same thing over again. You have to have continual content. And so then when I started the watercolors, it kind of pushed me towards doing drawing,
Hmm.
because a lot of watercolors is you have a
Wow,
drawing,
it's beautiful.
and then you are filling in the blanks, and you're filling in the blanks.
Hmm.
And so what it's kind of like here, Ramona, is that when I was like studying mathematics, and struggled with I struggled with it, but I took a chemistry class, and a tutor told me on what it was all about, was balancing and I was struggling with those chemistry things, and getting things, and they said, well, it's just about balancing it. And it's like, you're balancing this, you're making this thing balance. And then
Hmm.
that hit this key thing, and once I figured that out, and I was balancing things, pretty soon algebra was easy. And then I went on to, I went on and did, I mean, differential equations was tough. That was a real
Hmm.
tough. It took me, I did have to take it twice.
It's
And
difficult. I took it in college.
yeah,
It's
and
difficult.
I remember the breakthrough moment happened when we were just getting ready to do an exam, but something happened, and there was like a power outage or something, and then something happened, whatever. And then the teacher said, okay, uh, don't confer with anybody else, but bring these tests back on Monday. You're gonna just do it at home. And I did it at home, and that was the first one of those tests that I passed, because I had a trouble with the 50-minute exam.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh my god, I can do this stuff, and I can do this stuff. And I did do it. And that's, but when I was given allowances to have a different testing done differently. But nevertheless, it was like what I guess I was getting to is that you sometimes, for me anyway, you arrive at the same place, but you start in a different place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'll
it's sometimes you need a different setting. You know, it's a little bit more time to be able to relax your mind. But it you can get to that place. Anybody can. Mm-hmm.
So maybe I will get to that place where I will do more drawings and then and have more and being able to take my easel or to take my sketchbook out into the forest and just do a sketch, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of sketch in that moment, and then something will come of it. Then maybe like in a year from now, I'll have one of those GoPro things, and I'll go out and do a live sketch, go walk up into the mountains or whatever, and do my
Anything is possible. Look,
you know
anything is possible. You are very creative. You're very talented in different medias of expression. I have no doubt that you'll get to that place that you feel comfortable that you're there. Talking about this combination of art and divination, how did you come across, or where was the beginning of that path in which you started to explore divination, tarot, and
all right.
such?
Well, for this card deck specifically, I had bought my first. I haven't had income in like 2 or 3 years because of being doing healthcare with my mom, and so
Hmm.
my money supplies has always been really really short, and so um, where that came is that 2 years ago, yeah, 2 years ago, I got the COVID. My mom got the COVID. My mom was in the hospital in intensive care with the COVID, and I was recovering from the COVID, and I was at home. My mom was in the hospital, and I was talking with my aunt on the telephone, and for some reason, somehow she came to the subject that her grandmother was a tarot reader. And I had kind of wanted to do that, but there's that whole prohibition, the thing in Paul that talks about why you can't do divination and so forth. That's still strong in my mind, but I'm starting to get
Hmm.
to understanding these things a little bit better. And where he also in Corinthians, I think it is, where Paul talks about the gifts of the Spirit. That also
Hmm.
might be in the Acts of the Apostle, but how do you know that doing spiritual guidance using tools for a person isn't one of those gifts of the Spirit in the
Hmm.
discernment spirit? How do you know that that's not that? Because when you look at when they were talked about divination, the prohibition against divination probably had something to do with pagans and the other religions that were not Judaism were doing. And if you look at it, because a lot of the ancient um, synagogues that they dug up, they had zodiacs on the floor. So I think it's clear that the Hebrews were doing astrology, and that
They were
astrology.
do there's actually a lot of examples of divination in the Bible. I mean, it's of instances in which different forms of divination were used. A lot of them in the Old Testament, actually. And that
Yeah,
is a topic that I'm looking into because that'll be a great one for a video. But I actually, funny that you mentioned it because I have some examples here written down, and we have, for example, casting lots, which is geomancy, and one of them is when the story of Jonah and the whale, right? And it says on exactly in the Bible. Then the sailors said to each other, "Come, let us cast to find out who is responsible for this calamity." They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. And this method is actually used throughout the Bible to discern God's will of or judgment. That's one of them. We have Joseph when he was in Egypt, and the Bible talks about Joseph's cups, and it said, like in Genesis 44:5, it says, "Isn't this the cup my master drinks from, and also uses for divination?" So it's believed that it was a form of scrying that he was doing with the cup,
Mm.
and like the Pharaoh's dreams, right? In which were interpreted by Joseph. That's oniomancy. That's like divination through the interpretation of dreams. And there's so many examples in the Old Testaments in which for in daily use divination was used. It wasn't until later and some thoughts in the religious aspect that were used that were against it, because the only form of knowing the truth or getting message from the divine was through certain channels, and any other ones were actually prohibited. But
Prohibited.
this is
Yeah.
a topic, yeah, this is a topic that I definitely would love to explore in, I don't know, a live, a video. But
Mhm.
divination has been part of the human experience ever since the dawn of time.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just there was that element of it. And then you want to look at if you want to look at something else was that and the apostles, whatever, the disciples came up to Jesus and said, "Oh, those people over there are healing and casting out demons, but they are not part of our group." And then with the expectation is that they would, Jesus would go over there and scold them. "Oh no, only I am allowed to do that." But that's not what Jesus said.
Hmm.
What Jesus said was that anybody who whatever does in my name is it's okay. And so in a sense, you would
Basically,
be,
thanks for your help. Thank you for helping.
yeah, exactly. And so it's okay. So to me, that gives you this green light that maybe religious universalism is okay because it's
Hmm.
all in that spirit. And that where religious exclusivism, I think personally, I think it came about in that it came about between when the church institutional came into existence, when between 320 and 380, because the church
Hmm.
as we know today didn't really exist before 320, and pieces of it existed, but the church institutional, being that you had this one creed and everything to follow, it came with the Roman, when as the Roman Empire was collapsing, and they were using this new religion in order to unite the people, and so everything that we know about all the good and the bad all come from that time period. And so it's like, and then you had this need to the Reformation being this thing or you need to open up doors and throw in the light and let the light in, but the light had been and so we're in actually in a place where we need to do that again. And like my favorite American philosopher, David Henry Thoreau, who wrote Walden's Pawn, he said this in his book, and I haven't found it because I listened to the book on an MP3 book, and I remember this very distinctly. He says that every generation should be writing its own. So every generation needs to let the light in,
Yes,
and
I've heard that. Hmm.
and and you have your own story, and you live in your own story and your own mythology in this right now. That's really that every generation needs to do that, and you don't need to be stuck in the past because there's this constant evolution that is going on and so forth. And so if we go back to these cards are completely worthless to you if you are not open to a story. Doing poetry that is like this doesn't happen unless you are open to a story. You
Hmm.
cannot do cross out poetry if you are not open to a story, because you can find you could go through a tax document and find a poem in it, but if you're not open to a story, you ain't gonna find nothing. And that's
What?
kind of what that's where
How do
it
you
goes.
define? How do you define being open to a story? What is that look like?
I don't
What do you mean
know.
with that?
It
Being
means I
receptive. Being
recept
receptive.
being receptive.
Hmm.
I
Mm.
mean, you have an open mind or an open heart, and so if you're like for instance, if I'm in a moment of extreme panic and anxiety, my anxiety is running high. I don't read cards during that time, because it's gonna be like, what am I gonna do? Get nothing but tower cards and death cards, and there's nothing. I'm not gonna get anything. It'll just give me this barrage of this even more negativity that's coming at me, and so it's just like I can't deal with that right now. So I put the divinatory practices away when I'm in that state. And so anything within, it's just all about more like this. And this is as far as it goes. It goes to my icons. And
Because you're not receptive to that form of messaging, is what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah,
Uh
yeah.
huh.
Because when you're in an anxious state, or you're in a panic state, it's not
Uh huh.
you need something to calm you down, and going to going to a psychic or doing anything like at that point in time, I think it might just be a waste of your money, because it could be do more harm than good, because what you need is to calm down. And
I mean,
you know,
if people in general they had different, I don't know, ways to react on different situations. Like there's people who feel the most focus when they're stressed. Other people, it blocks them completely. Like in your case, you can't use certain divination tools when you're under those emotions.
mhm,
Um, it's an individual experience. It's like, for example, there's people who say I love to have music in the background when I'm studying, when I'm reading. I can't. When I'm reading, it has to be complete dead silence, because
mhm,
anything can distract me. So we all have our own processes of being able to manage information and emotions and everything, and that is something that is valid.
yeah.
In your case, you can't use certain tools, and you go and find, I don't know, spiritual nourishment in certain iconic religious images. Which is your favorite one? Which is the one you go to the most from the ones you have right there?
Of these, it's this one. This one is my favorite.
Hmm.
It's my favorite. Is
And
this one?
who's depicted there?
This
Can't
one
see it
here.
well.
This is
Oh,
Madonna,
Jesus and uh-huh.
and then this one is the one where it's your word. It's your word, where you are you're you're becoming your word. It's the in that becoming kind of a thing. It's not the end of the line. It's not the end of the line, and it's the beginning, and it's the middle. It's the middle where you sit for the most.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the middle, and you're in this middle place your entire for the most of your life. But then you do cycle back and forth. You cycle around and around and around, and then you're back here. You're back here, and then you're here. You're
Uh-huh.
here, and then you're there, and then you're back, and then maybe you're back here again, and you're here. You're just all back and forth, and you're zipping around at these different places. So if you look at this, like the 22 or the 21 Arcana cards, and you're kind of going in between your judgment. You're at the tower, you're at the devil, you're at the wheel of fortune, and you're just not. It's not a linear progression. We're in a. It's maybe sometimes it's linear, but you're just kind of you're in your spiritual place. You're
Mm-hmm.
you're all over the map, and and more often than not, you're at the beginning all the time. Because if I look at what the most common angel number that I see all the time is 111 or 1111. It's one. It's one. It's always one.
Mm.
Sometimes it goes to five, but it's always one. And so it's like, where am I at? I'm at the beginning. This is where I'm at. I'm at
Hmm.
the
I love those images. I love Byzantine art. I've always loved it. I think it's like one of the most beautiful
yeah.
religious art expressions. One of the most beautiful religious art styles, Byzantine art. It's
supposedly
amazing.
supposedly this rock came from Istanbul,
Hmm.
from Byzantium, and it's like one of my friends who I haven't seen for a long time, but he's doing house church missionary work in Turkey, which is completely against the law to do that, but he's been doing it for like 15 years now.
Hmm.
And,
Let me ask you, for you do what role do symbols and colors play in your divination interpretation?
hmm, I really don't know I don't know if I can answer that because I think I tend to be more attracted to the words itself. However, I like bright colors. I like bright
Hmm.
colors. I mean, so I have my diviner kit that I have put together, and this is a new piece. It's a little mini pocket. Um, I'm not so sure that this is going to work out, but what does
The New
has worked
Testament.
is this missile, a Sunday missile,
Uh huh.
and 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 I
Is
think
that
that
for you a form of bibliomancy? Do you
yeah,
consider
that's
bibliomancy?
the tool that I've been using a lot. Not
Hmm.
because you might be you're looking at and you might be feeling this. This is what you might be feeling. You might be feeling like you're being whipped. You could be in
Hmm.
your room and you're being at that, you happen to land on that page and you're being whipped or whatever. It's, and so it's that. So I have in my diviner kit, I have some dice, I have some Scrabble tiles. It's not a complete set, and it doesn't have all the letters in it either because I went from my extra Scrabble tiles and go I didn't go into my Scrabble board game itself. I didn't want to, but that I have that, and then I have this, which I broke down and bought it off of Etsy. Like it was like a 35. It was a pretty expensive deck. It was a keyword pocket size keyword deck,
Mm.
and so I was like looking and
That
so
deck has been around for years. I actually had it. I bought it at sea many years ago, and it's really good. It's really good. I think what's different about that deck is, if I don't remember wrong, it's I think they have kings as fire and knights as air.
oh,
Yeah.
let me does it say here?
Hmm.
It has kings as yeah. This king is a fire.
Yeah, they have all their kings as fire and all their knights as air. When there's two school of thoughts, traditionally
Yeah,
uh kings are considered air, but there are people who consider it fire, and vice versa with the knight. And that's something when I started learning about Tower, I struggled a little bit with, because I did see knights as air and kings as fire, you know, and especially with swords, as I always associated swords with fire and wands with air.
I see.
And this is my reasoning. It's those tools are used in action with those elements. Like, for example, when do you use a sword? Use a sword when you're defending yourself, when you're attacking someone. So there's that element of rage, of emotion, which I associated with fire. I would have never thought associating swords with air. Same thing with wands. You know, what is the element that makes uh, those branches sprout? It's air, it's oxygen, right?
Yeah.
So the function of each one of them goes in direct association with a different element. And for me, it's one that I had struggled with for the longest time. And some people associate it that way. You know, for some people, it's, you know, they have a different interpretation, and it comes down to that, you know. So there's some people in the community who feel they're the gatekeepers of meanings and interpretation of cards, but at the end it comes to what works for you and what resonates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ramon, in my journey with the tarot so far, is that I'm still in a place where the words on the cards are more important than the images. And so,
For example, like what?
yeah, the words. So where like why I would use this as I would use this tool before I would use this
Hmm.
tool.
Yeah,
It,
you're talking about cartomancy. In the sense of cartomancy, you're giving more weight to words than images.
yes,
Is that what you're
yeah.
saying? Okay.
And so that's what I'm doing, and I'm looking at those words, and I'm looking at what am I feeling in this moment, and then I'm looking at those words, and so no offense to anyone who has, and I haven't started using your decks that you gifted to me for my Christmas, not Christmas, birthday recently. And why I'm not there yet is because I'm not in a place where I feel competent enough to do a reading for somebody just based upon what the feeling of that picture gives me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Totally
I'm
understandable.
in a place where I am giving a reading for somebody, and I'm looking at a specific word and a meaning of a word and what the images or not non-images, that the feelings that those words give me, more so than what the image on the word has given me. So if it were to look
Mm-hmm.
at it, if I were to think of what in this current state of what kind of a deck would I want, I would want a deck that has actually didn't have any pictures on it at all, and it just
Mm-hmm.
had concepts on it. And then what I would do in that moment is I would conjure up the image in my head of what that card was. Or you would be looking like, okay, this when in my very first year in dabbling with the tarot, I did this exercise a lot, and I would go and imagine somebody and imagine what your card was, and I would come up, and the image would come up in my mind. And then later of the day, or a couple days later, I would go through my deck, and I said, well, what is so and so's personality? What is there? And then I would draw that same card that I imagined in my head a couple days earlier or that day earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in a sense of trying to sharpen your own thing, but at first it was just about, you have the maybe, yeah, there is the images, and I'm pretty much very well rooted to the RWS. I mean, more so than, but I do like those other things, those other decks.
Well said. I oh my god, I didn't scroll the chat or the comments for such a long time. There's a lot of other people that popped in. We have Ange from Roots and Waves. Hello, Ange. Great to see you. Thank you for being here. And like I say, no show is complete if Miss Tarot D is not around. So hello, Miss Tarot D. Thank you very much for being here. Let me see. We had Janet Lee G. Hello, Janet. Thank you for stopping by. We have Aquarius Tarot Adventures. Great to see you. Thank you for being here. Who else? Let's see. We have a lot of comments. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, there's like 100.
Um, yes, and I was like so. connected with what you were saying that I didn't even think of scrolling. So
Going,
what you
yeah,
say, what you say is true. Some people use images to be able to convey some people use images to be able to convey messages, but not all divination tools have images. We have pendulums, for example, we have dice, we have geomantic sticks. There's like so many, and each one of them, what it is at the end, is a representation of a concept, an idea that at the end we interpret. So it's not to be able to use a divination tool, you don't necessarily have to, it doesn't necessarily have to have an image.
yeah,
um you know, and not all images resonate either with everybody.
exactly.
That's why we have like a whole variety of different tarot
Yeah.
decks. We have
So like,
pandas, we have pasta tarot, there's like futuristic, there's all these different themes, and some resonate with people more than others. And at the end
yeah,
is what you get from it.
like for instance, this is one of my birthday presents, and it was this real life tarot deck that Ange kind of turned me onto it, and I looked at it and I thought, oh, this is really cool because it's like have cards like the cult,
Yes,
or
I've seen that.
you know
See,
this is
I've
and
seen
I,
it. And
and so
that's an
my
example of one that doesn't really resonate with me necessarily. Um, but some people find it fascinating and get beautiful messages from it.
but I was just like thinking in terms of it and thinking, oh, this is like the one that this is the one that's going to open the door to those other ones for me.
Hmm.
This is
Yeah.
the one that this is what I feel. This is the one that's going to open the door for those other tarots that have the non RWS images on them, and
Hmm. Definitely.
it's kind of what I.
There's some people who start their journey, I don't know, in with pip cards, and then they go to RWS or vice versa, or none. There's some people
Yeah.
who use playing cards as a divination tool.
Mhm.
At the end, you don't have to be at a certain point. It's what your journey is.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Do you practice numerology? Because you were talking about certain numbers that keep popping up. One for me, for example, is 333. For some reason, I usually wake up in the middle of the night at 3:33 in the morning.
Yeah. I
It's
got that.
really strange. It's really
I've been
strange how you get those combination of numbers. You were talking about 111 or it's 999, like in the case of your channel. How do you have a method of interpreting the message through them? Like, do you look at it as a whole? Do you add the numbers and try to get a message through it? Like, what's your process to be able to interpret the message through numbers?
well, I kind of think that when you see those numbers, it's not. I think it's more that you're supposed to pay attention to what's going on, and whether what those specific meanings of those things are, because there's so many different meanings out there that it's pretty fluid, and it may just be that you are spending too much time in low vibration energies. Maybe you're spending too much time with the lust, or with anger, or with these other things, and then you start seeing these numbers, and it's the angels are saying, hey, McFly, 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 wake up, McFly. Pounding on your forehead, wake up. And so and you need to do is stop doing that. You're
Hmm.
not helping yourself any. You know, don't indulge those emotions of your body. Don't do that.
Hmm.
You're or whatever. It's like, wake up. That's kind of what I kind of feel more about what those numbers are all about. why, and you keep seeing the same, because a lot of times you'll see 111, you look at the clock the next, oh, it's 222, it's 333, it's 444, 555, and that's as far up as it goes, and then it goes up to the 12, 12, 12, 21, because you don't get C666 because the clock only goes up to 60 minutes. It doesn't go up,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think when you're seeing those numbers on clocks, I think it's really more about that. It's about that knock, 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 wake up, wake up, wake up.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's that, and then or you're playing, whatever. Your mind is
Yeah.
not in the right spot, and you need to
Mm-hmm.
focus your mind down into being in a different place. And then whether or not you pay attention is a different story, because sometimes it's like, screw you. I want to spend my time and my desire and my lust and whatever. I want to spend that time and time doing that, and or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, or go away, go away, spirit, go away. I don't want, just go away. And I don't know. More often than not, that's kind of the way it is. It's like, spirit, go away. I'm not really. Why can't you come and visit me like at 12 noon when it's broad daylight? Why do you have to visit me at 2 o'clock in the morning? You know?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I said maybe that's when we are the most relaxed when it's late at night. It's funny because well, Bobby says that's a goddess trying to get your attention. It's interesting because I get 333. I'm telling you, it's really strange. Um, Often at night. And today I was with my partner at Costco. I have all my watch, my iPhone, everything in my car, everything in military time. So it gets to a point that I go from 12 to 13 to 14. We're going through one of the aisles, and out of nowhere, I wasn't even looking at the time. My partner, who doesn't use military time, he said to me, "Oh, it's 3:33 in the afternoon." And I was like, why it's am I getting all these messages at 3:33? And like you're saying, most of the time it's some entity, some spiritual being that is trying to contact you or convey a message, and that it attracts your attention. Like in my case, I do numerology, and it's something that I definitely want to explore. Some
Yeah.
people say like Janet Lee, mine is 3:33 and 3:31. Miss Terrell D is 9/11, of course.
Yeah.
Emergency of the drama that you are, Miss Terrell D. No,
Mhm.
I say that with love. Yeah, so numerology plays a very important part in our life, and that's the it's and it is in your case, and that's why I was asking you, if it's what's your thought process when you get those numbers?
Oftentimes I just look it up. I go in there and I get to go open up the Google and I look it up. 'Cause I had them memorized kind of, but then I don't have them memorized anymore. So I'm kind of referred to. I guess it's also why I use the keyword tarot deck, is that it's there. I don't have all the cards memorized, and Einstein said, why should I remember your phone number? It's in the phone book.
Hmm. I don't know my mom's phone number because I have
Yeah,
it on
well,
speed dial.
why do I need to remember that stuff? I got other stuff
No.
to think about. I got the moon and the stars and black holes. I want to put that stuff in my head. I don't want to put your damn
Hmm.
phone in my head.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
so like, you got all this stuff, and so that's I think that's there's part of that. Why keyword tarot is why.
Yeah. Do you actively work like with any spiritual guide, ancestors, any specific energy in your process of divination or spiritual meditation?
No, not really. But if it is, it is the Jesus figure, whatever that
Hmm.
represents, Mary. But it's beyond
Okay.
that. Beyond that, it's not really. It's more of a It's more of this spirit than anything else. It's more
Hmm.
like this. It's that it's something more undefined. Is that
Mm-hmm.
undefined hand is holding it up, this undefined thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't put like when I was 40, I was thinking, well, do I have time to go to one more Christian conversion into Orthodoxy? Do I have time? I was thinking about that because I really like the Orthodoxy. But then, if I stayed in Seattle, I probably would have. But since I moved away, and the nearest Orthodox church is 100 miles away, it's like I'm not going to drive 100 miles to go to church. So,
Christian Orthodox, you say?
yes, and so it's
Uh,
just you. How much time do you have in your life? Do you have? That was when I was younger. I was thinking, do I want to go and add one more in there?
mm-hmm.
But people in those religious faiths don't like religious tourists.
Hmm.
You know,
Have you shared with anybody within your community that that divination is a practice in which you find spiritual comfort?
no, I don't. I don't share much with people who aren't open to stuff.
Hmm.
There's,
It's very
there's
uncommon for people in the divination community to talk about Christianity as another form of spiritual pillar. And I'm not against it. I mean, I think it's anybody finds support and growth in whichever combination of faith you choose
I don't practice it
use.
anything like how it's practiced. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
uh, because if anybody, if I were to actually talk to anybody and talk about things, and then if I told them, oh yeah, I'm I'm this, and it says, no, you're not. You're an atheist, or
Mm.
you're damned to hell. I gotta turn the overhead light on here. I'll be just hold on a second.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot to do that before I started, and then um, so it's to get more. My light's fading. It's that people who know me do not think I'm a religious person. If once they start talking to me, they either think I'm confused, I'm lost, or I'm just outright damned. Because, you know, because when you start talking with a Christian and saying that this experience is to be your experience, the Jesus experience was not confined only to Jesus.
Could you
It's not
elaborate on that?
it's not the imitation of Christ, it's the becoming of Christ. And when you that this is what your experience is. When you start talking in this word, you start talking blasphemies. When you start saying that your experience as a human being is to come into the Trinity. If the Trinity is a concept that I don't really think, I don't know if it is a concept, but if your place as a human being is to be a part of that Godhead, that there is this creative spark out there, there is the creator of the universe, but there's also humanity is a part of all of that. And so when you start talking like this, then you have exited away from whatever church institutional teaches. But church institutional teaches this stuff. It's in everything. Expect with the Catholic Church, it's in there. You go to the Eucharist and you drink the blood of Christ. You eat the body of Christ, and you take God into you, and it becomes a part of you. And this is the message. So if you just take a look at the Mass and you skip the dogma. You just skip all of that stuff because all that stuff isn't important, and none of that stuff, that is even going to be that stuff all exists only in this realm. Our religions and everything, it exists only here, and it doesn't exist beyond here. When the body
Mm.
dies, stuff dies too. But what does
Okay.
go beyond is that spirit. And so you have that your body dies and you're born again.
Mm-hmm.
You're born again and you are in this elevated state. And all of these figures in here have been born again. They've come out of their graves. They've been born again and they've been born into their God consciousness.
Mm.
And that if you're that's the goal. That's what the goal of the story is. And the goal of the story is not for you to be like cleansed of all that, that you go and you get your personal relationship with Jesus stuff or whatever that stuff means. I really don't know what that means. And it's not about it's not about that, but it's about you coming into this relationship. You're coming into yourself, into who you were created to be. You're coming into this realm of this
Mm-hmm.
this spirit, this raw spirit. And what is that? I don't know what that is. It's
Mm.
and so that's this. So that's where, if I start in the past, if I start talking about that stuff, it's not. That's why I don't talk about that stuff. I don't talk about that stuff because people don't want to hear it.
It's very profound too. It's hard to wrap your mind around it. There's a lot of thought process involved in it, and receptiveness, like we are talking earlier, to be able to
Hmm.
understand it. Do you believe in reincarnation?
Oh, I believed in that since I was a kid.
Do you have any stories that, I mean,
No,
from personal
I
experience, from people you know?
I don't. But it's because in this particular time, I don't really feel like any of that knowledge is necessary because to me it seems that what's necessary is just right now. And
Mm.
maybe sometimes in passing or joking, I would say, "Oh, I was a an Asian fisherman and I fell overboard and I got eaten up by fish." And that's why I don't eat fish.
You
In
that
jest,
was your case?
I would say, I don't know if that's true or not. I just say that in jest. I say that in
Mm-hmm.
jest.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you want the salmon, or why don't I don't eat fish? I'm sorry. So I will make up a story for why I don't like salmon or don't like fish, and the
Mm-hmm.
reality is I don't like the texture. The texture, I don't like the texture of I don't like the texture. The texture bothers me. It makes the texture makes me ill, and I can't get past the texture. And so I know that I don't eat that. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very interesting comment that Miss Charity is saying. Is it that the meaning of the Eucharist? That by eating his flesh and drinking his blood, we become part of God, of the
yes,
God being. So I
yes,
get Billy. It's not about imitating Jesus. It's become more like him, to
right. And I
become our
and
own God self.
when I was studying theology and all that stuff, I got into trouble because I used the becoming language. In the church, you're not supposed to use the becoming language. You're supposed to use the imitation language. And where a lot of the mystics in the past got burnt at the stake is because they used the becoming language.
Mm-hmm.
Becoming language, that because that's what. And so the church has a way that knocks down people who use the becoming language. But I think there's probably within reason, because when you say that, um
Becoming. When you say becoming, it threatens the foundational power of the institution. So specifically of the church. You don't need the church as a mediator between you and God. You can access directly. You can be God yourself.
Yes, exactly. So you don't, and that's it.
Hmm.
So it's kind of a threatening, but it's that we need a we need a oh, there's a cow in my backyard.
A
Um,
cow.
Cow, yeah, it's just right outside the window there, and there it is. The grass is truly greener on the other side of the fence. I can
Mm.
attest. I can see because that's the second cow that got out in my yard today. But it's not my cow, the neighbor cows, but nevertheless, anyways,
That
uh,
was random.
yeah. um, it's that, yeah, that becoming language, and because you don't need it.
Hmm.
The the word was written on your heart. It was
Yeah.
written beginning of time, and it's always there to be accessed.
Hmm.
And so, I guess where, in one sense, I would say it was in knowing that Waite was a Christian mystic. It to me that gave me permission to. That also gave me permission to that's what I guess for me it's just about permission. So when it gave me permission that I can incorporate that that part of my upbringing into my tarot practice, and rather than walk away from it altogether. And so A. Waite being a, though he was a Mason, he was a lot of other things, but he never renounced his Catholic faith.
Hmm. Definitely.
Granted, you
Uh,
know,
do you know there's a tarot deck called the Biblical Tarot?
yeah, I looked at it. I didn't like it.
Ooh, I actually like it. There's two versions of it. There's a color one and a black and white. And I'm so tempted of getting it because I mean I love the stories of the Bible. Like I said, I
Yeah,
was
I
raised in a religious household, and I used to read the Bible a lot. But now I appreciate it in a different context. The historical aspect of it, but there's a lot of the universal truths, and I don't believe in it with a sense of faith. It's more of like archetypal stories that we as humans go through, like in the Quran too. There's a lot of beautiful stories and some other religious texts, but the biblical tarot is something that I don't know. There's something fascinating about it.
well, maybe I'll take a look at it later. But what it I have a book that I was very disappointed, and I got it. It was like it was a kind of a trying to take a Christian look at the tarot, and I opened up the book, and I said, "Is this written by an evangelical?" It's just it has all the flavor of those of that it wasn't. It was written by Catholic, but it just seems overly flowery, and I think, oh, I'm gonna have to do a. I'm gonna have to try to read the book, but I can't seem to. It's like
Hmm.
when I
You're
look in
going
it, like,
into it. You're going into it with a bias, so that's why it's hard to be able to be
yeah,
receptive. Yeah.
and I do have a bias. I have a bias because I have a bias.
Yeah.
Like, I have a bias
Hmm.
against
Yeah.
a full form, and I think and I know that I probably need to really work on. I have a lot of forgiveness work and stuff to do in that
Hmm.
in that manner. And I think I know what a lot of it stems from just that sense that of never. So when I was trying to find myself in my younger years, and granted, I had this knowledge, that the knowledge was given to me about the becoming language, and all of that was kind of given to me when I went to Israel in '95, and that whole thing, that's what the goal is, and I kind of knew that, but I was trying to fit into mainstream Christianity and whatnot, which I tried for 10 years, and I wasn't successful at it, because
Mm-hmm.
these other things, it was not, it kind of stood in my way, because I saw something else, and I just couldn't. I saw this other reality, and this, that where everyone was asking me to be, was in this other place, and I didn't feel like this place was real. And I felt, well, you need to be over here. You need to really
Mm-hmm.
go in this other place. And so what I and having talking to people, and two, I said, the whole establishment of kingdom of God and all that stuff is probably going to happen, but you're never going to recognize it when it does. You only will see it in retrospect, and most likely it will not be what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
And a
Yeah.
lot of people won't accept that. So I could say, well, people are talking about this great awakening that's occurring right now, and that, well, what you would see it would be is that you would see my ideas on it, and in my vision of how I kind of see it, but and is that you would see it, is it would just pop up here, pop, 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 pop here, and eventually there would be a enough Christ consciousness that would come into the world, where instead of a world that prioritizes profits, it might prioritize the well-being of humanity, and not just humanity, but it might also be recognizing our brothers and sisters that have four legs, or that fly around, the insects and the grasses, and the recognizing of the consciousness of all life,
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
and factoring in and when you make a decision that you're going to do something, you might be factoring into those other things here that gave you life, that are part of, gave this form of humanity, gave them life, that you may be incorporating all of that into your decision making process. It doesn't mean, prioritizing well-being doesn't mean that it's all kumbaya or anything else, and it doesn't mean that we still won't have wars. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. But what it does mean is that like, okay, so if you were a type of person um that's an entrepreneur, I can't say, I've never been able to say that word, but you are a person who whose gifts are in business, and that is what makes you feel connected to the universe. Well, that's for your best well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
for another person, it might be art, it might be other things, but all these things, if you have well-being as your main currency in your civilization, it could mean different things to different people. And it doesn't
Definitely.
necessarily mean, what I'm saying, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be this you're sitting around with angels and hearts and all that stuff, and it doesn't mean any of that, and it doesn't mean you won't have disagreements. It doesn't mean that because your neighbor over there, who you think's an idiot, that you might not end up whatever, you that all that, those emotions and stuff won't go away, because they'll be there, because it doesn't mean that. But what I think, what it means is that if you spend more of your time in this realm, in that word on your heart place there. Well, I'm all backwards, and so it's like trying to cut your own hair here. that this is you spend your time that word, and whatever that word is, and that word which
Hmm.
is like that, it's not
Definitely.
defined. It's not
Hmm.
defined. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if any of this makes any sense. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
it does. It totally does. It's and I just want to add, I mean, highlight a comment that Miss Terrell D said. And it's interesting that you're using images and cards because Miss Terrell D, she shared with me recently that she's going to start using same cards to read oracle spreads. And I think it's a very fascinating interpretation and technique for divination, you know.
yeah, yeah. If I have more prayer cards and things like that, but it's getting to me. I kind of wanted to do that too, but I wanted other images and like the whipping at the pillar because that's there's a that one the images, but there's very limited number of these out in the on the marketplace, and
Hmm.
so it would be. I know that this is just a decal and it's painted over wood, and it would require somebody who has a little different skill set than I do because I could have this thought of I would go out and do this, but you know what? Like everything else, I would get a little bit ADD on these things, and I wouldn't have that ability to. So I wouldn't have the ability to do it because I would get bored somewhere in the process of
Hmm.
actually nuts and bolts of actually do it. Like Elizabeth, who went and did a deck transformation and cut all the borders off of it, and I'm thinking, I don't, I couldn't do that. And so, because whereas like my pet peeve on decks when the cards are sticky, and then I have to go and do some extra step to unstick the
Hmm.
card. I just don't have the time for that. I don't
I
have,
mean, it's you're emotionally, mentally invested in other things. There's other,
yeah,
like for
yeah,
example, the beautiful paintings that you do, the amazing poetry that you do. Those are things that other people can do. We
yeah.
all have our set of skills and our own way to be able to express ourselves. So right now we are at 1 hour and 48 minutes. Oh my God, this has been a long, interesting conversation. Let me start winding down. What's coming up for you on the horizon with your channel, your creative things that you might be planning?
Well, what I am is I'm going to be later this month. I'm going to be, I think it's on the 26th. I'm going to be on Spiritual Rain's Saturday Night Love show.
Oh, you're a guest in that show. That is
I'm
awesome. It's a
looking forward
very
to that.
interesting show.
And then I'm also looking forward to Miss Tarot D being a guest on my Coloring with the Tarot. I would like some other people, like maybe Bobby. I don't know if he has any time to come on and come on my show. I would like to
Hmm.
anyone who's welcome to come up. And my email address is the dot with a little period 999 show@gmail, and it's on my channel page. And
Hmm.
that's so having guests. I haven't had a guest for a couple weeks now. If you don't if you want to do just do a paint off, I'm welcome. You can do a paint off, or you want to do the coloring with the tarot. You'll do a card, and you'll talk about it, and we'll have a stream of consciousness conversation or something like that. That's one thing. And then this is poetry month, and so I don't have a guest for Sunday, but the next following Sunday, I think that Karen
Is it a
is coming.
poetry show? Poetry show that you have?
Yeah, if you
Or
want
what
to.
is it? On Sundays. On Sunday
Yeah,
you
well,
have your own poetry show?
yeah, it's for my after church chat thing. So I'm defining. Trying to maybe defining what that means. That it may mean different things. It doesn't necessarily have to be church related, but maybe it's like
Hmm.
okay, maybe it's more
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah,
yes,
I've watched that show, yeah.
maybe it's more like Saturday Night Live church chat kind of thing. And
Hmm.
it's one of my goals as just as a side note is that because there's that that comedian spirit that exists within me too, and wanting to, and I've mentioned this more than once, of wanting to. This one clip of this comedian lady, and she's giving a tarot reading, and she's looking at cards, and well, it shows here you're a bitch. That's what the cards show, and you're just a real a-hole, and and so where does that, coming to that, that's what it's coming to them. I'm thinking about. So where can I, how can I come to that place to where you can pick up those nuances, those types of nuances, and how could you do that? It probably won't happen, but this is just me dreaming. This is just me dreaming. How can you use your tarot and be more comedic? Because one of my
It's
favorite.
all practice. It's all
It,
practice.
so
It's
like
going.
you, there's a poet that I like, Sherman Alexie, and he's a Spokane Indian, and he teaches history at University of Washington. I've seen him a few times, and the first time I saw him, I seen his poetry in a book, The Business of Fancy Dancing, and I had heard him, at the library. I got a cassette tape of him. This was like 30 years ago. And then I go to my one of my cousins. She has a book release, and it was her first book, and her book was called Territory of Men. And then the people who were delivering she had some authors there, and one of them was Chuck Palahniuk, the author of Fight Club, who she was in a
Mm.
writer's, and Sherman Alexie, who was like this other poet guy. And I was like, oh my God, it was just like, like you see a celebrity. And so I didn't have my book with me. And so he signed it on a piece of paper, and then I taped it into his book. And then when I went up to Seattle, and then there's this Hugo House place where they have authors, and he was going to be there, and oh yeah, I'm going to go there. And then I go there, and I go see Sherman Alexie, and then I said, well, I introduced myself. Oh, you were my, so and so. Oh yeah. I wonder how, blah blah. How's your cousin? I said, I don't see my cousin very often. And anyway, and when I would go, when I went to in see that poetry reading, he spent most of his time doing stand-up comedy.
Mm.
And I've seen
You
that
see.
a lot with authors and so forth, is that they tend to it's not to say that, that I'm going to be doing stand-up comedy, but you see that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You
Definitely.
person who does serious art, but they also have this other element of side to them, which is
Mm-hmm.
I call it the coyote spirit, the spirit, or the trickster. They have this trickster spirit within them, and it doesn't mean that you're no less of a serious person if you use your sense of humor, but a lot of times people just plain don't understand it.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to convey the message sometimes.
You know, it,
Um,
yeah.
since we can't leave without asking you to please indulge us in with one of your poems.
Oh,
I love your poetry. Could you please share one of your poems with us?
okay. I will share a poem with you. Let's see. I used this one as like my autobiography for a long time.
Hmm. What's the title?
It's like 99. It's kind of a math equation. It's a math
Okay.
equation. Um, That one's a good one too. I forgot about that one. I don't know. So I got this kind of a one monkey banging away at the typewriter sort of thing going on. Meaning is extracted through the seeming randomness of it all. A stray observation here, a comment there, along with the occasional realization. Geological ages pass as these layers of sediment settle compact into minute blocks of earthy clay. Data bricks shift up, down, right, left, rotated every which way, turned inside out. Geometrically categorized by 99 dancing chimpanzees playing Chinese checkers. That's one. And
Love it. Love it.
and then let's go do. There's another one that I want to do. I think it's here. I need to find it.
It's cold down here. I'm at the basement. If you see me yawning, it's not boredom. It's just that it's cold.
I guess I could read this one. April 14th, 2012. I heard a poem today. In the madness of the syllables, I was speechless. It sounded like water as it bubbled up outside, as it bubbled up out the side of a hill, whose virgin stream carved muddy pocks in the soil. It sounded like a creek as it roars over smooth stones polished by fluid sand. It sounded like a blue-headed bird calling out to a mate in the wind. It sounded like a cloud talking to the sky in a whispering vapor. It sounded like a new blossom kissing a branch in purple puckers. It sounded like the shadow of the sun as it gently tugs a blanket up the side of a hill. It sounded like children jumping up and down on a trampoline trying to reach heaven. It sounded like a million people driving the highway, oblivious to what lies below their four tires. It sounded like a dog lifting his leg to spray a bush. It sounded like heat. I don't know what it sounded like. What are you asking me about this stupid poem for anyway?
That was good. Love it. Love it. You're a
Um,
gifted poet. I mean, I love your style, and it's not only the message, but also the way you read it. It's just like it's so full of like energy and beauty and beauty.
well, I made a practice of, well, it's doing spoken word poetry. And
Mm-hmm.
that poetry, I kind of feel like more people would like poetry if their first introduction to it was in a spoken form and if it was done rather than in a printed form.
Mm-hmm. It makes
And
sense. It
I
definitely makes sense.
felt that way. And if it was also in a more real sense and less of a, because with children you got to start with the roses are red and blah 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 blah,
Mhm.
and you got to start with these rhyming things and rhyme and or like the whole Dead Poet Society and you have that scene in there, and he's got the book, and oh well, we got to judge your poetry on this scale and do this and this, and then the Robin Williams characters comes in and he says, "You just rip that page out." In fact, I want you to rip that whole section out of that book because that if you even read that, you try to get that into your head, then it'll completely destroy poetry for you.
It definitely makes sense. Love it. Love that idea. All right, before we leave, we're gonna do a game that I do with all my guests, and it's called This or That. And I'm going to ask you 10 situational questions, and you will choose between two cards which one and why. Ready?
Yeah.
All right. Question number one: would you rather take a selfie at the edge of a cliff with the fool or at a wild party with the devil?
Hmm.
I'm so looking forward to these answers.
Yeah, you know what? I think I like the shadow self myself. That selfie with the shadow self, because it kind of like one of the best concerts that I went to. It wasn't a very big one. I mean, I like Coldplay. I saw Coldplay, and I would love to see Coldplay again.
Mhm.
And I liked every time I saw Black Sabbath. And I liked those big headliner bands. But there was one that I saw. It was in a small venue, and it was called Wolves in the Throne Room. And it was kind of like ambient black metal. It was ambient black metal, and the they were kind of based out of Olympia, but they did most all of their shows in Europe because Europe metal is like folk music over there. I don't know why, because it kind of gets into their Viking spirits or whatever,
Mhm.
and brings into their roots before the church kind of destroyed their spirituality, their natural spirituality. But the Wolves in the Throne Room, they did their show with oil lamps on the stage in the dark, and it was very like this meditative place. And so I, Heather, and
Hello,
and this
Heather.
meditative state and the music that just kind of, and so that the devil card being in the darkness there with this shadow self, and being able to be in touch with that other aspect of your human experience. Because I think I talked a little bit about that, about at night in the spirit is, there's a sense of these other spirits that are there, but you just want to shoo them away because you want to spend that time in your own human experience. And so the angels are
Mhm.
saying, oh, they're shooting this 333 at you, and this 444, and this 555. But no, you know what? I want to indulge myself.
So, devil
That,
it is.
yeah, the
All
devil.
right. Question number two: are you a shopaholic or a penny pincher?
Well, it depends. I am so like what came today was impulse buys over a course of it's been sitting in my box for like a month, but they were
Mhm.
things that came across my feed. So these are two decks of cards that I will probably never use.
Mm.
And so that goes into that shopaholic, and I'm not going to bring them out here because I'm going to do on my new channel, Tools of Fortune. I'm going to do a video on that as
Mhm.
maybe decks I will never use, but I bought them anyway. And I have what do I have? Decks that I will not use, like the
You're
top. I will
you're
never.
kind of using it by presenting it. It
Yeah,
ends up with a purpose. But I
yeah,
know what you mean. But I
yes,
think it's I because I heard that before, and I think it's not really the item that excites you. It's the process of like ordering it, the expectation of it, and
exactly.
receiving it. And then once you have it, it's like it loses something. I know exactly what you mean.
So
So
yeah,
what is your answer?
it's that shopaholic one.
Is the shopaholic? What other things do you feel you're a shopaholic for? Those are
Well,
just two decks.
those are two decks, but if you look at how many of those scratch tickets did I buy? How many,
Mm,
how many, and how much now, some of the things that I buy don't necessarily aren't things that I have. It's like how
mhm,
much how many dollars did I sink into slot machines?
mm.
Dollars. How much money did have I spent on liquor? And I haven't really had a drink for a little over a year since I started taking the metformin, but but I like liquor. I still think about it, but I wasn't like I never felt like was a habitual drinker, but
Hmm.
with Bobby's story talking about being a bartender, and I did bartend for a while, casino bartend, and but nevertheless, that's kind of what else am I shop? There's but then there's that whole thing of where you can indulge your shopaholicness by just going in and filling your shopping cart full of a bunch of stuff and then deleting everything in there,
Hmm. Yeah.
going through that
I have a
process.
friend. I have a coworker. She considers herself a shopaholic. She loves shopping and then returning items.
Hmm.
So it's like she enjoys that process, looking for items, spending hours in the mall, finding stuff, the excitement of getting it. Then at the end, she goes back and returns it. So
Yeah.
it's
Well, there's that, or you just never
it's
go
a, it's
buy
a
it.
high. Yeah, it's a high for people, and they have their own processes for it.
Yeah.
Question number 3: Best plot for a horror movie: Judgment Day or A Nightmare on the Night of Sword Street?
Um, since I really like Arnold Schwarzenegger in granted, I think his best movie is Conan the Barbarian, but I really, really like that second Terminator film. I
Mm-hmm.
like that
Oh yeah.
the
Hmm.
second one where he's back in
The
the
one from 1991, I think it was. And I remember the year clearly because I went to the movies to see it, to watch it.
yeah, I
It's
saw
a good one, actually.
yeah, but I
That
like the
Terminator.
Terminator as a great character, so it would have to be Judgment Day, and
Mm.
but I also like that Judgment Day card. But then if you look at the Nine of Swords, you're in this state of anxiety, and you are going to crawl out of your nightmare by crawling up those swords. Maybe you're going to bloody yourself.
Hmm. That's a good one. I actually like that. I like that. That'll be actually a great theme for a poem. We should
That
re-explore
that
this, right?
comes from Jackie. That comes from Jackie.
I like that.
That whole
Mm-hmm.
idea from her channel of crawling up those
Mm-hmm.
swords is how you get out of your
Mm-hmm.
city. And
I like
Jackie,
that. That's a great idea. I love that imagery. Question number 4: The universe hires you for a part-time gig. Which one would you take? Babysitting or zookeeper?
yeah, since I really don't like infants very well, and I mean I don't dislike children, but as long as they're someplace else and not, I like them when they get a little bit older and they get to, their minds turn on. But so I would have to be the zookeeper thing.
The Wheel of Fortune, the card that we painted together.
Yeah, have to be the Wheel of Fortune. Yeah,
Awesome.
babysitting doesn't thrill me.
Doesn't suit you. Question number 5: You're at a cosmic bar and the universe sends you a free drink. Which one would you choose? A custom made cocktail by the Temperance Angel or a mystery drink by the Ace of Cups?
Hmm. I would be tempted to go with the mystery drink, but because I also get migraines and I get migraines from alcohol, I would probably not choose the mystery drink because it might have something in it that would give me a migraine.
Uh
But
huh.
I would like to have that mystery drink, but then I would probably end up like by getting what you're expecting, that custom made drink
Uh
by,
huh. The custom made by the Angel.
and so
Great
it would,
bartender.
that cocktail would be
Divine. There will be a divine cocktail.
and that cocktail would be mixing cognac and rye whiskey together.
Mm. Oh, wow. That's a bomb.
Or if I, or like in a time that I got really, really intoxicated once when I went drinking with the dishwashers, I had I was drinking 151 mixed with Kraken.
Oh,
My mixer
wow.
was cracking, and I had like
Hmm.
three, and I showed up. I made it to work the next day, hungover like hell, but none of those other dishwashers guys, none of them, they called in sick, and but
You
you know,
pulled it through.
I told
That saves a
yeah,
lot of you. You have
yeah.
stamina. Question
Mhm.
number 6. You're running late for an important meeting. Would you rather draw the chariot for quick transportation to the meeting or the knight of swords for speedy communication to excuse yourself?
Well, I don't like to be late, so I would take the when it comes to like work engagements, I can't handle being late. So I would
Hmm.
rather get there, at least to get there, so that at least I was 15 minutes before I was supposed to start, because you need that time. You need that time when you do a job for someone else. You need the time to get yourself into character to do the job, and you can't
Hmm.
show up late and be expected to for anything to go right. If you show up late, you're going to have all kinds of trouble. Is going to happen to all day, and you might as well not go at all.
You're already stressed, you have bad energy, and then you're
Yeah,
late, the embarrassment. I totally get you.
yeah.
Question number 7. You're hosting a party and the snacks run out. Would you rather draw the Empress for endless abundance or the Magician to conjure more snacks? Don't think it too
Well,
much.
I'm not thinking too much. I'm thinking because the question doesn't really, you're having endless abundance or to conjure up new snacks, but what's the difference between the two?
There is a difference. So one of them is the act. Well, the endless abundance, it will always be there, so you will never run out of it. But with with the act of conjuring, you're actually taking action with it to make it happen.
So you're
So
making
one is
something.
already one is passive, the other one is more active.
I would probably all right. I'll just choose the magician on that because you might because your guests might get bored because you're having all you have is Cheez-Its and it's just an endless supply of Cheez-Its. And then that, and then that's all they're getting is Cheez-Its and there's nothing else but Cheez-Its. But maybe they want to have something else besides Cheez-Its, and then maybe what they're gonna have is tofu with some olive oil and then some maybe some soy sauce and some nutritional yeast on it mixed all together, and
That sounds
that's
good.
a really awesome tasting thing. Or maybe they're
I
going to take
love
some.
I love nutritional yeast.
I do too.
I put it on popcorn. On popcorn.
I buy it bulk and I get it by get
Hmm.
bulk. And then or you might want to have which is also really super awesome sauce is mixing um almond butter, olive oil, and soy sauce together.
Almond butter, soy sauce. Interesting. What
Yeah,
does
yeah.
it taste like?
It's really fluid, and you can use it as a sauce that will be good noodle sauce. It'll be good on rice.
Mm,
Right, it has to be the right consistency. So if you get a
right.
almond butter that you can pour out of the jar, which I know that means it's probably cut with canola oil or something like that, or whatever they're cutting it with. If you can pour it out of there, you use that and you mix it with more olive oil and you mix it with soy sauce, and then it becomes a like an Asian sauce that is like really super tasty.
That sounds really good. You got me at almond butter.
And so yeah,
I'm
so
gonna
it
try
would
it. I'm actually gonna try it.
yeah.
Question number 8. Uh, someone in your household, I guess your mom, um, spills coffee on a favorite shirt before a big date, even though you warn many times to be careful. Would you rather draw the emperor to command the stain out or the hierophant to teach a valuable lessons about being more careful?
You know what? I would just rather have the command the stains out because I'm like a
You don't want to deal with that.
who I'm this kind of this individual who like Um, you have to do these things, and a lot of times sometimes complaining about it doesn't really necessarily, matter. Now, like my old mom, she can't seem to do housework without complaining about, well, how did you let it get to be in such a bad state in the first place? And whatever. And I'm thinking, well, can't you just do that without complaining about it? What the hell does
Mm.
what and yeah, the place gets messed up. So what? I mean, it gets messed up. Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, I get it. I get it. I'm just as messy as your husband was. Okay, I get it. I get it. I get it. I need to be better. But
Mhm.
it doesn't
It is what it
necessarily.
is. Mhm. Adding anything to it, I get it,
Yeah.
definitely. Question number 9. You walk into a glass door in front of a crowd. Would you rather draw the justice card to sue the door or the world to make it a global meme?
Yeah, I remember doing that once. Gosh, it was so embarrassing to walk into a glass door.
I think we all done that.
It's
We've
happened.
all
Yeah, it's happened. I think that
one point or
I
another.
wanted to. I think my reaction was to pretend it never happened,
Mhm.
and so I don't know what card best. So it'd probably be maybe you would either pretend it or you would want to laugh it off, and I guess that's the whole thing about why our I don't want to talk about this, but it's like a leader is best off to do the whole thing of laughing it off rather than pretending it didn't happen or whatever, and or admitting that you made a mistake by running into the glass door, and or that you made a mistake because you didn't remember the geography right, because you're not in fourth grade anymore, or fifth grade, and you haven't studied geography since you were in whatever grade that is. You haven't looked at a map since then. Yeah, I can get it, because as we get older, we don't necessarily do that. You think you would know, but that doesn't mean you would, because a lot of times and so people make mistakes like that all the time. And so if a leader, world leader or whatever, makes a mistake on their geography, they're better off to kind of roll with it and kind of turn it into a joke or something like that than it would be to double down and whatever, and try to make you believe, gaslight you into whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally.
So
Last
yeah,
question. Who really missed the mark? Fashion advice by the lovers or survival skills from the Ten of Swords? Who missed the mark here?
well, having all those 10 swords sticking out your back isn't a good thing. I don't
Yes,
think
right?
it's not. Yeah, so that's the one I would choose, but because it's just like, okay, that's that you got hit by one sword, but not let alone 10 of them. So I mean, what the hell's going on there? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you got all
At
those
least
bad pieces.
cross to its next reincarnation.
Yeah.
So it's part of the process to get there.
Mhm.
Oh, Bill, it was amazing chatting with you. It was so interesting. A lot of unexpected answers, very deep conversation, and fascinating at the same time. Um, I have to say, thank you for what you do. Your voice is very important in our community. Your creative process is amazing. I'm a total fan of your poetry. It's so beautiful, and I'm looking forward to see more of your shows for a long time. And again, thank you for what you bring, because it definitely is of great value
So
for us.
one of these days, I want to have you. I know you don't like the go live together feature, but I'd like to have you come on and play a song for everyone on
Yes.
Sunday after church chats, like maybe in May. because like
Mm-hmm.
this month's gone. I'm gonna and so like I know I would like Jeff to come on. So I know that Jeff, but I know Jeff has been working on Sundays at that time, but I do know that Jeff would be able to spin poetry with me with cards. I just know that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
um,
That would be
in,
awesome. May
in,
works, definitely.
yeah,
That's my birthday month, actually.
what May
May.
is your birthday month? Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and,
We
yeah. So
we can
you know,
arrange something.
yeah, we'll do that. And so it'll be in that, I am starting that show on an angel number, that 1221 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do
That's
that
awesome.
do it deliberately
Mm-hmm.
because it's such a
You're
compulsion.
are you gonna be active on both channels? Because you have another channel that you recently put up, right?
I'm not. I don't have enough subs yet to stream yet. So I
Mm-hmm.
need 50 subs before I can use the um because I have a computer, but I really just I don't like the camera angle of a webcam on a computer because that's the one that's the most. But when I go that extra step of plugging a webcam in, I don't I need to go on an Ethernet cable in order to make it work.
Right,
And
right. So it's
so
what I'm gonna do is after the show, I'm gonna post the link to that other channel so people can subscribe as well,
yeah, yeah.
and hopefully we can get.
I'm using the Go Live or I'm using the mobile device because 80% or 80, 70, 80% of users of YouTube use their mobile device. And
Mm-hmm.
the vertical live stream is in their YouTube tools is all about reaching those people.
Of course. All right. So thank you very much again, Bill, for sharing with us. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your beautiful energy. We have Mama Sushi. She stopped by at the last minute, but never late. You can watch it on replay. And
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to see you all again in another episode of In Orbit with. Until then, thank you very much and blessings to all.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Very much.